Welcome to Retirement Unlocked with Larry Heller. Your life, your way, unlimited possibilities. Join us as we explore how tailored financial planning and investments can help you navigate life transitions with confidence. Let's dive into this week's episode.
And welcome back to Retirement Unlocked with your host, Larry Heller. Retirement is something most people spend years working toward, but feeling confident when you get there isn't just about having a certain amount of money saved or reaching a specific age. It's about knowing that your plan is built around the life that you want to live and that the important pieces are all working together. On today's episode, we're going to walk through a retirement confident checklist. 6 areas that are important for anyone approaching retirement or already enjoying retirement to review from time to time. The goal isn't to create more stress or to give you another thing to worry about. It is simply a way to step back, take a look at the big picture, and make sure you're headed in the right direction. That seems like a really reasonable thing to do, Larry. How are you?
Yeah. How you doing, Bill?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. So where do we start?
Yeah. So I thought today would be a good idea. Just we're going to kind of cover the high level, 6 areas that you should kind of have as a checklist. We'll delve a little bit down into them, but we've also have done a lot of podcasts on some of this material. So I'll reference some of the podcasts as we go along if you want to kind of take a deeper dive in some of the areas.
Beautiful.
But I'll start with the first one because the first one is really one of the ones that we talk to people about all the time, and that's spending. And some people, that they're concerned that they're going to have enough money, but others and a lot of people spend too little in retirement. So how much should you spend in retirement? So that's really kind of a big factor when people are looking to retire. So really what we kind of do and what we kind of suggest is starting with identifying all your retirement income, your pension, so if you're lucky enough to have Social Security, and seeing what your fixed amount is going to be. And then you can kind of say what are your expenses are going to be, and then you kind of know what the difference is and how much you have to pull out of your plan. Of course, don't forget about inflation because especially with people living longer. So now you can kind of back in about what do you need on a monthly basis, but also factor in some big time ticket items. So creating that cash flow analysis is so critical. And so many people have no idea and they just shoot from the hip and they take money out when they need it. And then they're always worrying about, am I spending too little? Am I spending too much? So one things that we do is we recommend creating a paycheck, a retirement paycheck, right? Just like you were when you were working.
Sure.
And we find, Bill, that, people just feel a little bit more better that when they're receiving the same amount of money between whatever their fixed income that they're receiving plus this paycheck, and they get used to that and they don't feel like they're spending down their portfolio. It's psychological, but it seems to work.
Well, no, that's totally understandable. Because for years, most of us, if we were fortunate, collected a paycheck every couple of weeks. We could see what it was. We knew how to plan on it. And it was like, okay, and now we're retired. And there isn't that paycheck. So, it makes a lot of sense that you consolidate your sources of income and redefine them basically and saying, yeah, you're still getting a paycheck and this is what it looks like. So I can see how it's psychological and emotional, actually. Larry, and part of creating that sustainable paycheck has to do with the next item on the checklist, which is investments.
Yeah. But before we go there are 2 podcasts if you want to kind of dive a little deeper. Episode 197 from net worth to cash flow and episode 169, mastering retirement withdrawals, expert tips for smart distribution planning. So check those out as well. But yes, the next area is really how do you create an investment, investment portfolio? How do you make sure your allocation matches to your retirement, your retirement need? Some people say, well, you know what? I just want to live on the interest. I don't want to go into my principal. Well, two things about that. If you just kind of want to do that, you may spend less than you can during retirement.
Yeah.
Plus, you don't want to just look at things that produce interest income, because that may not protect against inflation. So you may need to invest something that's going to protect against inflation. And people are living longer and may have an illness. So you want to balance your growth with obviously preservation and income to create the right investment strategy and portfolio that's going to provide during your retirement lifetime.
Well, I have a question in here because I think a lot of the ideas about how to invest when one retires have changed recently. Am I wrong about that, or are we no longer like looking at just pure straight interest instruments, but you're encouraging people to stay invested in the market to some degree?
Oh, sure. So again, to protect against inflation and a longer life expectancy than people that were retiring, decades ago.
Yeah.
There's been this studies, this 4% rule study,
Right.
and now there's been some revisions to that, and that's a good rule of thumb, but that may not be perfect for you, and it's also different, if you're retiring at 60 or you're 90, that it could be a little bit different. So that's a good rule of thumb. So, but yes, you want to make sure that you have a diversified portfolio. That you want to make sure that you rebalance along the way, and that you're properly planning for a market volatility, so you're not withdrawing from your portfolio in the equities, the stock market, when they're down. So having enough proper cash reserves as well. And, adjusting your mindset from accumulation mode to retirement mindset. It takes a little bit time to do that.
Yeah, it's a weird. Speaking as somebody who recently retired, yeah, it is a weird. It's a weird thing to get used to. It's like, oh, I got this money now. Oh, you want me to spend my money away?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Some people have an easy time doing it. Some people do not.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. And this next topic on the checklist, we've covered many times over multiple podcasts, but it comes down to one of those facts in life you can't get away from: taxes.
Yeah, I mean, this is so crucial, and we spend so much time in looking at this and trying to, create a retirement strategy, because taxes make a big difference. If you're retiring and all your money is in a qualified account, 401k and IRA, when you withdraw that money, you're going to pay a lot of taxes on it versus if you have significant amounts of money in non-qualified accounts. So you want to be able to create a tax efficient withdrawal strategy. So, which accounts to draw from, when to draw it from, knowing what tax bracket you're going to be in now, but also planning for what tax bracket you may be in later in life. As we've talked about before, the required minimum distributions have been pushed back to some people 73, and for a lot of people born in 1960 and later, it'll be 75 that they don't have to withdraw. So really managing that. And there's a few different ways of trying to make that work. But you want to kind of plan not just for year by year, but you want to plan in the future.
So how do we do that? I mean, we have covered, most recently in episode 194, why taxes often go up in retirement planning and how proper planning for that can make a big difference. But what are some other things that we can do? And remind me some other episodes that our listeners could check into if they want to go take a deeper dive.
Sure. Well, one of the things, and one that's really crucial, especially if you retire and you're not taking your Social Security yet, you may be in a really low tax bracket. So doing a Roth conversion may be beneficial for you. So that means taking money out of your IRA, paying the taxes now, converting it into a Roth where it will continue to grow and you won't pay taxes down the road when you withdraw the money. But how do you know that, how do you know how much you should do, how much you should put in? So we use, there's definitely software that helps us, guides us to run the analysis and to see how much does it make sense to convert and how much to do each year. And you kind of look at it year by year. Because also there are some other impacts on that. If you're doing a Roth conversion, you're kicking yourself up. One of the things that it could impact is your IRMA, your supplemental Medicare premiums, and they could go up in price. And we just did an episode recently, 199. Well, if you want to get into that a little bit more on IRMA. And there's also capital, gain tax planning. So if your non-qualified assets have a lot of growth in them, and if you do want to pare that down, there is, capital gain tax. And so how much you should use for that. If you keep that for your life and you die, then your heirs get a stepped up in basis. So now you're planning for your lifetime, but sometimes you're also planning for the next generation. So there's a lot of different things to do. And you mentioned that there's a couple other podcasts, 185, how to avoid a tax time bomb in retirement. So so you check out some of those if you want to dive in a little bit more in that. I think that we mentioned managing sequence of returns. So in episode 171. So there's a few different podcasts there, which will dive a little bit more into taxes and retirement.
Yeah, and one of the things I think a lot of people often overlook, because maybe simply because they don't know about it, but charitable giving can be planned, and there are very tax efficient ways to do that too, right?
Yes. So, a lot of people that do charity, cash may not always be the best solution for you. Can you distribute appreciated stock? Should you use appreciated stock into what's called a donor advised fund, and being able to group charity in a year that you may have a high income tax, or qualified charity donations through your IRA once you're in withdrawal required minimum distribution mode. So there's a lot of different ways of also improving and minimizing some of your taxes if you're charitable inclined.
Yeah, a real quick question about that. A QCD, a qualified charitable distribution, doesn't count as income, right? If it's handled properly, that doesn't affect the IRMA and everything else that you get into.
Yeah.
What about if you're taking some of those appreciated stocks and moving them into a donor advised fund? Is there a tax advantage?
So again,
to that?
instead of if you wanted to pare back on some of your equities and your investments that have grown, if you sell it, and then use that cash to do charity, you're going to pay capital gains tax. So you could just gift the appreciated investment, a lot of times directly to the charity. That's one idea. Or if you want to do a large amount in 1 year, rather than spreading it over into a year where you may be in a lower tax bracket, you can actually open up a donor advised fund. You can do it with cash, but you can also fund it with appreciated stock. So that's the way of being able to gift and minimizing some of your income taxes if you want to reduce some of your exposure to your investments.
We got to talk about life insurance. I know this is on the list, and other insurances as well. What should we be looking for and be aware of, Larry?
Yeah. So again, in retirement, you have these life insurance policies. Do you need them? Do you still need them? Do you need the death benefit requirements? Do you want to give it for the next generation? Should you keep it? And if you're at a high estate tax, maybe does it make sense transferring into an irrevocable trust? So you want to kind of check out your life insurance there. And of course, there are a lot of other types of insurance that you want to make sure you're on top of, your Medicare and your understanding of that and your different options. And then, a long-term, care illness. Do you have a long-term care insurance policy? And if you don't, do you have enough to self-fund an illness? So really that's another part of the planning that's going in retirement that could throw a wrench into your plans. And of course, making sure that you continue having the proper, property and liability protections.
Yeah, no, totally understandable. Which leads us into the next item on the checklist, estate planning. And I know that we've done an episode fairly recently. The number escapes me, but review this for us.
Yeah. So again, we're not going to dive into, like Bill said. We just did the episode before this one was we talked about estate tax planning, but just making sure that now, you're older, you're retired. We're all not going to live forever, so just double checking and every so often making sure that your wills and your estate planning documents are up to date, your healthcare proxies, your power of attorneys, especially if you're moving and you're retiring to a different state. There may be some things that need to be changed, and just checking on your beneficiary designations and making sure that they're up to date. And whether you're in a high probate state and whether a revocable trust makes sense, or if you have an estate tax issue, and see ways of protecting that. So that's number 5 on my list out of 6.
Yeah, and somebody once said to me something in regards to estate planning, which has stuck with me, and I'll say it for our listeners' benefit. If you don't decide what you're going to do, if you don't do your own estate planning, the government's happy to do it for you.
So, absolutely.
You would like to avoid that. What else should we be aware of?
Well, and the last thing is really not the non-financial part of retirement. Are you retiring to something? Your lifestyle goes. A lot of people, they've worked their entire lives, and part of their being is what they did in their career, their business. And creating a purpose and a structure. And we find a lot of people sometimes have a difficult time transitioning into that. Yes. So really kind of thinking about that before you're going to retire, and what are you going to do? I mean, some people say, I'm just going to play golf, all year round. But and what happens if you can't play golf after a while? So really trying to find that and trying to align what you're going to be doing in retirement to give you some type of purpose.
Exactly. Retirement is a new destination. Retirement is a new place, right, Larry? You need to look at it really differently, because it's not a job anymore. But you are retired, and as we've talked about many times, remember to create a purpose. Remember to structure it a little bit, because your whole life prior to that was structured, right, Larry?
Yeah, and like we mentioned before, people are living longer. You may have 30 years in retirement if you're lucky enough. So really planning for that, for that long-term, time frame, is important. And that keeping your mind sharp and having purpose when you're getting up every day is important.
And stay socially engaged. I'm just going to throw that in as a non-financial piece of advice.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up today's episode, remember that retirement confidence doesn't come from having a perfect plan. It comes from having a plan that is reviewed, updated, and aligned with the life that you want to live. Retirement planning isn't something that you do once and put up on a shelf. Life changes, markets change, and, sometimes your goals may change too. Taking the time to revisit these areas can help you stay prepared and make adjustments along the way. Want to make sure your retirement plan is on the right track? Check the episode description, where you'll find additional resources and the option to schedule a complimentary 20-minute call with our team. We'll see you next time on Retirement Unlocked, and please note that Heller Wealth Management is now a part of Savant Wealth Management. Savant is a registered investment advisor. This content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as personalized investment advice. We'll catch you next time.